All right, it's like Christmas morning for me here. I am Kris Keefer. Welcome to RacerXOnline.com. The long-awaited 2024 Kawasaki KX450 is here. We are at Glen Helen Raceway today. You can hear the tractor in the background. We're about to start here in about an hour. But the only 450 I feel like this year that had the most anticipation. So for me, I've been a Kawasaki fan for quite a while of the chassis. There hasn't been another 450 out there in the last few years that has a better chassis feel for bump absorption and just straight line stability. So having the Kawasaki engineers and the R&D team totally revamp this KX450 is exciting. So first things first, what is different? Everything. Just read the presentation last night. Engine, frame, suspension valving. We have the same springs in each end, but everything has changed on the KX450. If you guys are wondering, hey Keefer, what can I roll over into my new 2024? Not a lot. The clamps will fit, your front fork will fit, your front and rear wheel will fit, the shock will not. The shock is different, the shock is actually shock is shorter, and the reservoir is on the opposite side of your 2023. So there is not a lot of things you can roll over to your new bike, but nonetheless, we have a Brembo front brake system and a Nissan rear, which is kind of unique to us in the moto world. They do that in the street side. They do split brake systems up, but we haven't seen that in quite some time in our motocross world. With the engine, they're looking for more rear wheel connection, a smoother, longer power with a little bit more torque. As I was reading the presentation, there is a lot of internal changes within the cylinder head, the connecting rod, as well as the piston and the valve train. So a lot of changes within that. If you guys are looking for durability, yes, I did look at the subframe muffler tab. It is beefed up a little bit. Kawasaki says that problem of us breaking tabs should be resolved. And also, we'll get a close-up shot, but the lower chain roller is now different. It is just a slider. It is not a roller. So things are improving. Yes, this bike did gain about 4 pounds. So we're gonna probably break down some of that weight gain as well as what that does on the track here after we ride it. But when we talk about weight, we're not in that KTM era where, hey, lighter is better, because with a little bit of lack of weight does come a bike that's not as stable. I would like to see a bike that has good front end cornering and is stable. So Kawasaki is trying to blend that together. So when we add a weight to a motorcycle, that is not always a bad thing. So don't freak out on the weight on paper. Let's see what it feels like on the track. And we're gonna talk about more about the seamless feel and the looks of this KX450. We have a shorter muffler. It looks a lot better. We don't have that bazooka thing that we had in 2023. And for me, it just looks like a cleaner KX450. I'm excited to ride this thing. We're gonna spend some time, probably a couple engine hours at least today. We'll come back here shortly, break it all down. I'll grab a couple test riders and maybe compare it to the 23 KX450 as well as other bikes that I have ridden here at Glen Helen Raceway. Because God knows I've spent a lot of time here at Glen Helen on other bikes. Stay tuned. Okay, just wrapped up here at Glen Helen Raceway. You East Coast riders will be proud of us. It rained today, we rode in the mud, but our guy behind the camera didn't get any of it because he ran right into the truck because he didn't want to screw up his camera. But nonetheless, just trust us, we rode in the mud today. Had a little chance to test the KX450's mud power, is what we like to say. So, half a day today. I would like to put more time on it. We will continue to put more time on it. Over at KeeferInkTesting.com, I will have more information. But I think I have enough information for you guys out there to try to make a choice on which direction you want to go. So I brought my guy, Eddie Laret, here. If you want to turn your volume down when he talks, it's not our fault, it's his fault. So let's just start off by some of the things that I didn't mention at the top of this episode. So, of course, we forgot to mention the Rideology KX app. Now the KX450 does come with an app. You can download it to your phone. You pick up your bike. There's a CCU number on the left side panel. You take your left side panel off and you connect to your phone. So it has everything. It has an hour meter. It has maintenance schedules. Also, of course, it has maps. You can download your own maps. We tried a couple of maps today we'll talk about here in a little bit. So similar to the Yamaha YZ app, the KX now has that. The couplers are gone, so much easier for us and you to create your own specialized engine character. So that is nice, much easier, much more digital world, and KX is following that. So we will have another tutorial on how to do maps. If you guys don't know how to do that, that will most likely be over on the Kiefer Ink testing side, but nonetheless, we'll explain it step by step because I know some of you guys, it's a little difficult transition leading from an analog world into a digital world. I'm older, I understand that. So we'll have another video separate to that. So with that being said, Eddie has a KX450. He's purchased KX450s before. He's ridden the KX450 a lot. I have less time on the KX than Eddie does, but nonetheless, I've ridden it quite a bit. So let's try to compare a little bit from last year's version for the other previous KX owners, and I'll try to give more of a YZ450 comparison to the KX. So right away for me, let's talk about what I like the most is the chassis.
Yeah.
It has more front end character. I got my notes here. I have more of a front end feel with this chassis.
Yep.
You still have a lot of stability, maybe a little more stiffer feeling than the previous 23 KX450, yeah, but that doesn't translate into a rigid feel. Unlike a 22 YZ450 jumping to a 23 YZ450, that was a big jump in rigidity. This doesn't have as much of that jump, so I still have a lot of straight line stability, but now I'm not complaining about towing a trailer behind me. It feels shorter, yep, it has more front wheel feel. Area 2 and 3 of the corners is much better on the Cowie.
Yep.
So those are my positives. I'm going to talk about some of the negatives, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. So, you know, you always get nervous when we come from the previous generation, you know, where the front end was kind of nervous and kind of unpredictable, especially on flat, dry, hard packed surfaces. We didn't feel like we had much lean angle. So Cowie said, hey, we really went after that. We wanted to attack that area. So the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, are we going to get a Honda-ish feel, or are we going to get a Yamaha?
It has that little feel come on the down tubes, right?
Right.
It's similar. It looks similar to the
Yeah,
Honda.
so that was the first thing I was nervous about. I'm going to tell you guys, nah.
Yeah.
Not at all. Kawasaki kept the same rigidity in their frame. I don't feel like it got any stiffer, but really gave us more contact patch with that front tire. Yeah. Side standing, straight line stability still there. I agree with you. The bike does feel a lot shorter. Yeah. It feels a lot more nimble. Flickable would be a good word for that. You know, it's back and forth, changes direction very comfortably. Yeah. So yeah, chassis wise, I think Kawasaki did a great job. I'm very happy with it.
So for me, what we call contact patch, in the world of Glen Helen, Southern California, maybe you East Coast guys, you guys follow a rut for a long time, you're in a rut and you're coming out of the corner in a rut. Here, we have a rut for a short amount of time, so we're on our edges of our tires a lot. And what I don't like about the YZ450 is a little bit stiff in those areas. This doesn't have that. I feel like there's a lot of tire on the ground when I'm under a lean on throttle.
Yes.
That's what I like about this machine. Loading in, and I'm sure Spencer got some shots of me, when I'm jumping some tabletops and there's like a G out or a load, the frame feel has a really comfortable, safe feeling underneath me. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of deflection. Again, track wasn't that rough today. I'm gonna ride it, but I managed to race here on Sunday, and Mount St. Helens wasn't open for us to test today, but I went down it. All the bumps were there from race day, and I can tell you guys, stable chassis, lots of comfort when you hit the square edge bump. So for me, I like that feeling.
Yep. Yeah,
And
I agree.
what I needed out of the Kawasaki was more front end traction.
Yes.
And I feel like I got that now.
Yep.
Didn't really screw with fork height a lot today. I will play around a little bit with that later, but for me, chassis, if you guys are worried about stability, slightly more rigid than last year's Kawasaki, but I'm not complaining about it. Unlike the Yamaha where I complain a little bit, man, it's just a stiffer feel.
Yep.
You know, I don't feel like that is here on the Kawasaki side.
Yeah, they didn't lose their comfort in their chassis whatsoever. The chassis, to me, is still as comfortable. I'm coming off an SR. It's still as comfortable as that, but just, like I said, it's just a way more predictable front end.
Little tidbits here. Swing arm is the same. The linkage ratio, now that I've talked to the engineers here today, it is a different linkage ratio. The shock is a shorter shock. You still get the same amount of travel, but the shock itself is, the length is shorter. The forks are the same. Spring rates are the same on the shock and the forks, but the valving has been beefed up. So last thing about the chassis, I do feel, and this is a negative, I do feel like there's more vibration now with this chassis. The chassis, the whole bike itself is up almost 5 pounds.
Yep.
And a lot of that is within the frame. It's beefier, it's heavier. Doesn't mean that it feels heavy on the track, because I don't really have that word here today for it. We're going to talk about the engine, and we'll get to the weight feel of that. But just like overall, the frame is heavier feeling, and I do get more rigidity. And I guess you pointed out today, some mounting points are different, and that could contribute to that.
Yeah, and I'm not an engineer, you know, but I've been around chassis, and I've looked at them, you know, inside and out. And you know, before the upper subframe bolts would mount to the actual spar up by the shock tower, and now they're actually going to the frame. So I don't know if that's given us some, you know, coming back from the muffler, if we're getting some of that vibration, but I didn't make it 3 corners, and that's the first thing that came to mind was like, wow, there's more vibration.
Yeah.
So
you will feel more vibration coming from your older Kawasaki.
Yeah.
I think it vibrates a little bit similar to a KTM feel.
Yeah. So do you? Let me ask you. Do you feel it more in your feet or more at your hands?
Initially on low RPM, I feel like in my hands, and then when I'm high RPM on the track in second gear, I feel it through my feet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of the same. I don't feel it as much in my hands. I didn't really feel it like it was bugging me. I mean, they have these new lock-on grips now, so they kind of float off the bar. So that didn't really as much trigger that there was more vibration until I felt it in my feet, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty aggressive.
So that's the chassis portion of it.
Yeah.
Engine, so much different feel than from an SR to a stock KX450 and 23. What you're getting is you're getting a linear feel off the bottom. There is no on-off feeling in the corners. That, you know, jerkiness that happens on the 23 KX450 and the SR, that is not here on the 24 KX450. It actually is, it doesn't have a lot of meat. It doesn't have a lot of torque. So you're not going to get on this thing and you're like, wow, it's exciting, unbelievable, like a Yamaha or even a KTM. I think it is a little bit slower off the bottom than a KTM.
Yeah.
Mid-range to top end climbs much better than the 23.
Yep.
It revs out farther in second gear. Third gear seems a little bit shorter. Fourth gear is more usable. But for me, mid to top end and over rev is much improved on this Kawasaki versus last year. Would I like more meat? Yes, I'd like a little bit more torque feel, but for me, this is easy to fix. I would rather have a little bit of a slower 450 than a super fast 450 that I can't control with the chassis that goes over all hell that I can't control.
Right.
So for me, yes, if you buy it, you're gonna be like, oh man, it's not that fast. So what you can do, so if you pick up this KX450 in your dealership, there is a grommet within the airbox. We tried it here today. Kawasaki took it out because it's called a weather grommet, so it keeps the water out of the airbox. That, you rip that thing out, you can stick, you can take your seat off, take the battery cover off, and you can just grab it and pull it out. and holy crap, man, it makes a huge difference. So I had him put them back in and try it, and man, it feels like an ISDE muffler. It's really corked up, choked
off.
So for me, first thing you guys do when you get to home from the dealership, rip that grommet out of that air box right away.
Yep.
It really wakes it up. But for me, smooth power. You always tell me I'm vanilla ice cream.
Vanilla.
I'm pretty vanilla.
Yep,
it's kind of wild the power. It's very vanilla.
Very vanilla.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, it's silly, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing that Chris said. I was kind of a little disappointed at first because I'm a third gear guy.
And you're 220
Yeah,
pounds.
I'm 235 pounds.
235, okay.
Yeah, so I like to, I try to like third gear stuff through, the sweepers. I don't like shifting a lot, So right away I noticed that was not going to happen with this engine package.
You got a downshift.
So, yep, you got a downshift. But like you said, second gear is a lot longer than the previous models.
More usable.
Yeah, so I even tried it today on Talladega Start, like you just kind of roll down, and I could carry second gear pretty much all the way up to the base of Talladega. So that kind of gave me some more reassurance because I don't like most of these current 450s that are out. They're too much power. We don't need that.
We're always trying to smooth out 450 powers, and then you get on the 350, you're like, oh, it's the most fun bike I've ever had.
And in our 350 video, I mean, we all went faster on the 350.
Correct.
So I once I reset my mind, because I didn't have that torquey drive, that excitement. Once I reset my mind, it actually increased me to carry more corner speed.
Correct.
It wakes up your ability to want to ride the motorcycle a little better. And I always think of these late days that we ride out here at 2, 3 in the afternoon when the track's dry and it's choppy. I want to ride that.
Correct.
I want to ride something that's vanilla.
You're not going to break the rear end loose.
Exactly. So
to me, it's more connected to the rear wheel. So when you have, you can have a slower engine, but sometimes that's disconnected the rear wheel and it feels heavy.
Yep.
I'm going to go back to this word heavy. So I have another word to use this engine, this low end feel. It's lazy. It's a lazier feeling low end. It doesn't necessarily make the bike heavy because sometimes when you add weight and you smooth out a power, it just feels heavy. This doesn't feel that. It just feels a little lazy.
Yeah.
You need to wake it up a little bit. You rip that grommet out, and it does get better. Gearing changes, I'm not quite there yet. We're going to experiment with that, but I don't know if I would want to change the gearing quite yet.
Yeah.
One thing we did do is Brock Tickle was here. Of course, Brock had a big help in the production process. He's race team tester over there at the Kawasaki, Monster Energy Kawasaki. So he created his own map, and we tried it. And it does help wake it up a little bit. It's not a lot on the low end. It does help the mid-range pull more. So there is a tickle map that I will put up on my website and show you guys that here soon. But there is options to wake it up. Look, at the aftermarket is going to make plenty of things.
Yeah, they're going to go
the muffler. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of airbox mod that we can do here soon.
ECU stuff.
This engine will evolve. It will get better. And again, I'd rather start slower and work my way into having a beefier type of torque versus having too much early.
That's what I was telling the engineers. We had the senior engineer of this project and the vice engineer of this project here, which is, I've never got to see that. That was pretty cool to see those guys be here and actually have some Q&A. But I was telling their people, like, I'd rather start on the softer end and then put the power where you want it than have all this power and try to take it out.
Correct.
So I think that might have been a lot of their maybe train of thought, with it. And it's their first generation of this new chassis. So they're going to evolve it over the next 4 years and, find places to improve little things here and there. But it's a very vet-friendly motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very, good bike to get started for, like, 450 stuff.
Yep.
It's a good platform to start off with.
Suspension, so when I went out on the track today, it was pretty deep. I'm sure Spencer's got some shots of me coming in the corners. Not a lot of tracks marked up on the course yet, but overall, not a lot of pitching. The chassis and suspension, was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was going to be softer than it was. The fork had good dampening feel. I do feel like the shock could use a little bit more damping initially. I went +2, a little bit stiffer on the fork. I went a little stiffer on low speed on the shock. Raised the rear end up a little bit with high speed, so that was a better change for me. So there is some things that you guys can do to help the shock. But overall, I feel like it's a way better platform than last year where they had, man, it was soft in the front end and it was divey. This doesn't have as much dive. I'm sure when it breaks in, it'll be a little bit softer, but 175 pounds. Balance is really good on and off throttle. Not a lot of squat when I'm under throttle. Not a lot of dive when I'm off. So, sure, a little bit soft, but for me, comfortable feel. The fork stock is 5 millimeters up in the clamps this year, unlike last year where it was flush. I think maybe I would drop mine down a little bit to 3 millimeters. This chassis can afford to get a little bit maybe less weight on the front end, because it does have quite a bit of weight on the front end this year. So I'm going to play around with some of those settings. But overall, there's nothing that is like stands out like I don't like that. Maybe the only thing for me is the vibration part of it. And I would like a little bit more meat coming out of the corners. But overall, very pleased with the Kawasaki. Durability, even though we don't know this yet, I feel like is going to be better. The frame is a little bit beefier. The tabs on the subframe for the muffler are better. We'll have to go through the chain sliders and all those things again. But fasteners are the same as last year, so you got to be careful with the fasteners. Of course,
they changed some stuff though. Like in the radiator shroud here before, we had this one. I don't know if people could see it because they're there, but you had the one here that had the little tab on the frame that would always strip out. Well, that's gone. It's seamless now. There's no bolt there, and it looks like there's maybe a hook, and the plastic just hooks on it. So I think Cowie tried to get rid of some of those pressure points with these little tabs that would create those kind of issues. Biggest one, I think, for Kawasaki that they improved on the durability of the machine is they got rid of that lower chain roller. That's gone, and I don't want to say it because I hate comparing bikes to bikes, but they went more to like a KTM style where it just has the slider. That for Kawasaki people that ride them religiously, you're going to love that, because that chain roller, you could always wear those things up pretty quick.
Quick thing before we wrap this up. I know it's a long video and Spencer's yawning behind the camera, but Brembo front brake. I'm a fan of Brembo. On my race bikes, I try to go that way. So control for me is nice. I like that they went that way at the front brake. I like the front brake. I do think the hydraulic clutch, I'm neither here nor there with it. It does fade a little bit. I've had that fade a little bit today. So if you're a clutch abuser like myself, that might be a problem down the road. We're going to have to dissect that a little bit more. But the brakes are good. I like that the 250 millimeter rear disc is gone. We're back to a 240, so less touchy, less grabby.
But still great power.
You're not squeaking around the track, so that is nice. The note of the muffler, you bazooka lovers from 23, just rejoice, because now it's short. We got a little missile, so now it sounds quiet, has a good note when you're revving it. I'm excited for the aftermarket to have some cool looking mufflers come out for this thing. I'm sure we'll test those. But shout out to Kawasaki as well for putting Dunlop MX-34s. Thank you for not having that front tire that I'm not even going to name it. But now we have front tire traction, MX-34. If you guys are looking for front tire traction, MX-34, Kawasaki has a 120/80 on the rear. Great tires, awesome tires. That's a great platform to start with, especially if you want to corner. Now that the Kawasaki can actually corner. We have a Kawasaki that actually can corner front end steering. Holy crap. I never thought I'd see the day. 2024. Here we are.
Yeah, one other thing that really stood out to me.
Spencer wants to go home.
Real quick. I think it's kind of important because Kawasaki and the previous generation got hammered for their levers. That problem's gone. That problem's gone. The biggest issues I had, obviously the brake lever was flat and they didn't feel the same when you pull them. They have different geometry to them now. They feel very close.
The skinny blade is gone.
Yeah, the skinny blade's gone. It's a KTM-ish front Brembo brake lever.
It's like having if you have a super skinny girl, you say you got to eat some cheeseburgers a little bit. You want to beef you up a little bit. That's what they did with the levers.
Yeah, Cowie did really good with that. Yeah. They got
overall seamless feel is nice coming into corners, sitting on the bike. I'm 6 foot. I feel really nice. 839 Renthal fat bars.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, first impression, couple hours on the bike, I think it's positive. It's a lot better than it was last year. I'm more excited than I was last year at this time.
Yep.
So we'll be putting some more time on it. Give you some tidbits on what works, what doesn't. As always, Chris at KeeferInkTesting.com. That door is cracked open for you guys out there that want some questions answered. Unlike other media, we have our doors open for you to ask questions. I'm here for you. Eddie's here for you. If you want some mechanical questions answered, Eddie at KeeferInkTesting.com. EDDIE.
Yep.
And we're here to help. So thank you for joining us. I know it's quite long, and I appreciate you guys sticking around, but we want to get all this information out to you guys so you guys know what you want to purchase. $10,000 is a lot of money, and that's what this bike is. $10,199 is the cost of this motorcycle. Of course, they have the retro version.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like it.
Do you?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I think retro with black wheels might have changed it, but
Yeah.
I know that the retro didn't have black wheels back
Yeah.
then. But I've seen some pretty cool stuff with Jeremy McGrath. You know,
Jeremy
doing
was
some,
here today shredding around.
yeah, doing some retro stuff on his bike, and he had the whole retro gear here, you know, at World Vet. So I'm in on it. I mean, it's better than some of the other retro bikes.
These
we've
notes
seen.
will grow as we go. So stay tuned for more videos over here on racerxonline.com. Don't forget, subscribe. 12 issues, $30. Get a free calendar. It's pretty cool. And there's a lot of cool stuff inside the magazine that you don't see on our website here, so that is fun. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon on another 2024 intro.